So today I'm going to talk about cases. Now you notice I didn't say bags. I'm not talking about bags like this. This is what I normally carry around, and I really like this bag. This thing is fantastic. It's small. Throw it over a shoulder, throw it in the front seat of the car no matter where I go. But there's times when I go on a longer trip, which is actually quite frequently, and this just is not enough. So I started thinking, maybe I need a separate suitcase type bag container to pack my gear in. So I started looking right away. I thought of Pelican, they have a big name. That led me to look at what I think is probably a little bit better than a Pelican for many people, and that's the Nanook series. I think the 935 is what I looked at. The problem is, how do you get the gear in there properly? Well, they come with, typically by default, this pick and pluck foam. So it's all cut into grids and you pick pieces out to create cavities to put your lenses and so forth in. It sounds all right, but in practice, nothing fits really the way you want. The foam does deteriorate after time, it gets banged up, and if you ever want to change something, you're out of luck. Then I discovered TrekPak. The TrekPak system is truly fantastic. Just looking at the different options they have, the way you can reconfigure things, it's remarkable. Then I'm thinking of other materials I need, and suddenly the price is really climbing up there. Now, I wasn't opposed to it. I'm like okay with that for good quality equipment that's going to last me a long time and it's reconfigurable. But I really then started thinking, well, my drone won't fit in here. And can I get all my lenses in here? Yeah, I probably can, but I can't. Oh, now I need to always bring cleaning equipment with me. And what about my audio equipment? Is that going to fit? So then I thought, let's just rewind things for a minute. When I bring my gear with me, it's because I'm out on the road in my car, chasing storms, doing landscape photography, etc. So I'm not needing to be restricted by a carry-on airline size case. I can afford to go with something bigger. I started thinking through what are all the things that I need, and I kind of came up with a short list. So first of all, it's got to be able to fit all my lenses, bodies, and batteries. It's got to be able to fit in my car. It's got to be durable, because one of the things is I drive on bumpy roads. Next, I need something that I can reconfigure. So you know, when I started thinking of that TrekPak, ooh, that was really compelling. And the last thing is I need everything to be really accessible. I don't want to have all kinds of things to pull apart and dig through. It's got to be really accessible, all kind of in one main plane of getting to things. So with those considerations in mind, I started looking first for a case. So I went to Amazon, did some searching, and came up with this company here, C&N Footlockers. They have a lot of different options. I started digging into them, but the size I wanted, the options, it just kind of wasn't there. Did a little bit of Googling, and I found out that this company, Everything Summer Camp, and C&N Footlocker, same company, and I found the one that I'm after. This one here, the Happy Camper Footlocker. The size is just what I was after. It also gives you the options to accessorize it. I might eventually put an organizer in it, I'm not sure, but I really like this Glide and Go tray. So what I'm going to do is the tray slides back and forth. You can see over here there's some rails that it slides on. They put those in for you. So it rises up and sits mostly inset into the lid, leaving most of the remainder down below for all your lenses and other gear. Now before purchasing it, I made one more change. You can go to Create Your Own Footlocker. And what I did was came in, you can see a little preview on the left here, and I set only the lid to be red and all the other panels to be black. So what did I find so compelling about this particular brand, this company? Well, one, they make these trunks here in the US. I like that. Second is, it's all metal fittings, and the wood is nice plywood. It's not fiberboard, it's a good, strong plywood. So I think this box is going to stand the test of time. Having done that, now I had to think about how I'm going to kit out the interior. I really like the TrekPak, but the TrekPak is not made for this case. So I started looking around, and there are, by all means, there always are people who've come up with DIY versions of various things, and TrekPak is no exception. Just Google it and you'll see there's a lot of information on the web. What I realized was Most of the Trek Pack DIY options and the original Trek Pack itself, on the sandwiched in between the foam is the Coroplast board. That's easy to obtain. And then it's the foam itself you're going to need to get. Now there's really many options. Trek Pack seems to use a 2mm foam, which is, I think, minimally what you really need. Because I have a much larger case here, using a thicker foam, even though it's a little more difficult to work with, I'm quite sure, I think it's going to provide a better option in the end. So yes, I'm giving up some space to using thicker foam everywhere, but I think the better protection is something I'm going to be pretty happy about. One of the challenges I had was figuring out how much of my gear is going to fit inside this box. Is it oversized? Is it larger than I need? Is it the perfect size, etc.? So I had to come up with an environment. I chose to use Adobe Illustrator. You could do this with one of 20 different programs. Heck, you could do it with drawings and cut out pieces of paper and start laying things around. But I wanted some tool in which I could create the shape and size of the camera and the lens and so forth, and then move them around to see how stuff would fit. So Adobe Illustrator seems to work well. You can see here that I created the size of the case itself, and then I started creating individual component pieces of all the things that I intend to put into the case. Each of them has a size and then a buffer around it for the padding. Moved these around, I rotated them, I tried all different kinds of options to come up with what I think is going to be a good fit. I hope that I've given enough buffer and enough safety zone in here that I haven't made it too tight. After I created this layer in Illustrator, I created a second layer on top of it to indicate how many pins I would need to connect all the pieces. Initially I thought I would buy the pins off the web from Trek Pack, but after I realized how many I'd need, the cost became prohibitive. I'm hoping that my planning here will pay off in the final build. So I started putting a list together of what I would need for the case itself, what I would need for the DIY options for the Trek Pack, started pricing it out. So what I realized quickly was it isn't as easy as I thought it would be. Now, you can certainly quickly go and find options on the web, but the options I wanted weren't all that available. One was I didn't want to use the EVA foam and put glue on it myself. I've used that before and it's really messy to work with. You need a good spray area to do it, which I don't have. It's just messy, it smells. So that meant buying self-adhesive EVA foam. Yep, it's more expensive, much fewer options out there. I did find a good supplier, I think, but I paid more for it. Secondly, some of the foam options. I didn't want certain kinds of foam. I didn't want white foam, for example. I wanted other options that I think give me more flexibility, so that narrowed my choices down. I think in the end I came up with a good list. I'll put links down below. So looking at my list, some of these are obviously unavoidable. They're just part of the build. The trunk itself, of course, the foam that goes at the bottom, it's an inch of foam. I can't do away with that. I am going to try to put some lights inside it because I often work outside at night in the dark, so I think that's going to be helpful. Foam for cells, this is the ability to put some foam to build up inside each cell of the Trek Pack up to the height necessary for the lens itself or the item itself, giving even more suspension for each item. These, of course, the self-adhesive foam sheets. Coroplast, can't get away without that. The Trek Pack dividers, they have a little tab on each of them. I'm going to use some felt tabs, I think. So I've got some self-adhesive felt that I think will work good. Now this was one of the hardest, to find something to work like the Trek Pack pins that connect each of the cells together. I looked at all different kinds of things. Some people suggest using bobby pins and things like that. I wanted something a little more substantive than that. So what I found was these carpet staples on Amazon. Now, I don't know if they're going to work because the size was really hard to determine, but I think they're going to do the trick. They're certainly deep enough, but we'll find out. That'll be interesting. All in all, the total comes to $380 US. It's a lot of money. It's not a cheap build, but I think when I'm done, if all of this works the way I think it should, I should have a really nice kit. So some of the components have started arriving. These are the lights, these are the staples. Man, these things are heavy. I'll use a very small number of those. Looks like the Coroplast, actually I think this is the EVA foam arrived today. More is coming. Some of it might take another 2 weeks, unfortunately. There's not much I can do about that. So until I have some of the components of the the DIY Trek Pack, I really can't do a whole lot. And also, until I get the case, there's some unknowns as to how deep into the case this tray sliding will go. That determines how high I can build up the foam at the bottom. Is there room above the tray? There's just all kinds of unknowns at this point. I'm kind of excited about it. So there's going to be a second movie when all the gear is here, and then I'll probably make a third movie, which is the build itself, and maybe another movie which will be using it out in the field. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing. And if you do subscribe, down here somewhere there's a bell. If you punch that bell, it'll give you notifications when I produce new content. I always like hearing from people, so please do leave your comments down below what you think of my plans, my hopes for this build. And don't forget, be safe and be kind.